Hi, Mark.
Hi, Will.
There's no John here today.
Thankfully not.
He's on holiday. He's in Mallorca, if you want to go and find him, which means his house is unguarded.
Yep. Any angry Castleford Tigers fans want to nip round to John's and deface the place, more than welcome.
Easy to get in, actually. They keep a key under the flower pot around the back.
They do.
Where are they again? We'll put the full address out later, but
on
lots
the
of
link.
valuable goods in there. Very sort of hipsterish paintings and a lot of sort of Carhartt things and beanies, lots of beanies. Vintage beanies.
Yeah.
Things that he
farming stuff,
lots
attire.
of golf clubs. He's taken up golf recently, hasn't he?
Yep.
He plays a lot of golf, doesn't he?
He does.
Doesn't necessarily do much sort of business work. I know you're friends still, but just about. But
still, we're always
supposed to be
friends.
business partners.
He's still business partners, still friends, still podcast
How many holidays
partners.
has he had this year?
Probably similar amount to me, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, for the guest this week, I thought off the back of watching the Grand National at Aintree, I thought we needed a Noble Yates.
Was that
to
the
come
name of
into
a
the
horse?
studio.
Yeah.
You didn't watch it?
I did.
Luke Yates is with us.
Yes.
Huddersfield
Welcome, Luke.
captain. Luke,
Cheers,
thank you
guys.
so much
Thanks for having me. I'm not much of a horse racing guy, but yeah, that's news to me. But
We should explain how you've basically come to be on this podcast. Not that we didn't want you on this podcast, Luke, but you
I'm
were
a ring in.
Well,
yeah.
Luke was always on the list.
Yeah.
For people to invite this year because
fast tracked.
he'd been fast tracked. Jamie Peacock was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, he pulled out.
Oh, I wasn't going to call Jamie out, but you've done it.
No, he was going to come and then something's cropped up. He couldn't make it.
Valid reason.
It is a valid reason. I got the text whilst in the coffee shop, and as I got the text, Luke Yates walks past the toilet. I thought, he'll do.
What did he shout? Yatesy.
Yatesy! What are you doing later, mate?
I thought he was asking me for a beer too, and I was like, "Oh, nothing. Why?" And then
Not this time.
Basically, we've just forced you to come on the podcast. Which
Yeah.
is better.
Yeah.
Kicking and screaming.
yeah, it's the amount of time I spent in this coffee shop. Flash sort of owes me.
Well, I know the feeling. The amount of money we spend in this coffee shop. That's the thing. We're keeping them,
Too much.
going. Exactly. So, mate, look, it's going to be really good to have a nice little chat with you over the next hour. And as I say to all the guests, the doors are locked, so there's no leaving until an hour's up. You don't have to say anything for an hour. You could sit here in silence, but the doors will open again in an hour's time. So
I'll do my best there. Yeah.
Mate, let's take you right back because I'd be honest, it was the first time we've met, and obviously you know Mark from Salford days, which we'll get into later. But childhood for you in Oz, take us right back there. Family, what was that like?
Yeah. So my mum's a Kiwi, my dad's Australian, so we're from Newcastle. Came through just in late Macquarie side, and then moved into Newcastle when I was 8, and then I started playing league. Then I was playing soccer back then, football.
Nice.
Yeah, my dad was the coach of me, my soccer team, and I was dreadful at it.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Newcastle, and I said, there's a lad up the road that was playing league, and he was a couple of years older than me. I'd flog him down the park, and they're like, "Why don't you go play league?" So I thought,
So you're built from it from a young age?
yeah, I was a little tubby kid.
Little nugget.
Still tubby kid
I
now.
might just call you, before we came on, I might call you the cube. Is that?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got a body. He's got a body like SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah, it's
It's
got
that
quite a nice
cute.
body.
Yeah, it's nice, but it's just very square.
Yeah.
Robust.
It's good to see
Whereas
that.
I'm like a fucking
Yeah, it's
beanpole,
good to see
so
that
it's
Flash has gone
Yeah.
the skinny fat now, the skinny arms and legs
Oof.
to the pudding now.
controversial.
Calves haven't really developed
No.
after it, have they? Yeah.
Carbs are still pending, yeah.
That's it. Still pending.
Loading. So that was the Kiwi influence in the family, because you mentioned soccer, but was that more of a union influence?
No, it was my mum. Yeah, she wasn't either league or union. She was sort of either or. She's from the South Island.
I'm thinking granddad and men on that side of the family.
Yeah. So we got family in Christchurch. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where she's.
Was there a
from originally.
strong Kiwi presence in the household? We had Elijah Taylor on last week who spoke fondly of his childhood and the Kiwi and the Maori kind of heritage that he kind of got brought up with. Was that similar for you?
I don't think the heritage is much. My mum's, we're not Maori, we're white Kiwis. But she has she likes her paintings and traditional sort of stuff. We've got like a tiki mask in the house, but I wouldn't say I was brought up like traditionally New Zealand Australian. Like it's pretty well the same thing nowadays. It's so close. It's just a bit better weather at home.
So we can't get you to do a hack or anything?
No, I'll embarrass myself.
So born in Newcastle, and obviously you ended up playing for Newcastle in the NRL as well. But rewinding it a little bit, just for those who've never been to New South Wales and that part of the world, what was it like growing up there? And you know, your sort of sporting heroes, the influences for you as a kid?
It was pretty crazy actually, because like where we moved, like I could see the stadium, like it was Energy Australia Stadium, but where Newcastle played out of now from my back fence. So it was always sort of there in the background, and we had such legends playing for the club at the time, like Andrew Johns, Danny Badiris, Steve Simpson, Ben Kennedy. Like there was just they won a comp in 1997, 2003. So there was just like there was a pretty strong rugby league influence in Newcastle at the time, and there was the grassroots sort of game was probably thriving around that area at the time. So yeah, it was just a massive. That's all we'd sort of do, just play our footy, and then beach and all that's there.
There's not many stronger rugby league heartlands than Newcastle in Australia, is there? It's a very blue collar city as well, isn't it?
It's traditionally called the Steel City, but yeah, it's like the Hunter Valley itself has got a lot of mines in it, so it just brings in a lot of people coming either to play their footy and work in the mines, or it's very, very working class. Like my dad's working in the coal industry now as a coal tester before they get on the boats and that. So it's predominantly that's what it.
Well, it sounds like our Newcastle. It sounds like our Sheffield if it's the Steel City. It's equivalent to kind of like a northern town compared to London being Sydney.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that image that you painted there. Out the back fence, you could see the stadium. Was that the dream, even as a kid then, or is it just, did it just work out being the dream come true?
I just love playing footy and just being with my mates. But then obviously any time like we used to get free tickets through playing. You play grassroots rugby league over there. They'll give you tickets for the Knights game. So that was any of the time of the Knights game was a massive buzz around, like people parking at the back of our house. So it was just sort of. It was quite cool to sort of come through in that process and seeing how the community reacts when the team's going well and when the team's not going so well. It's sort of the vibe of the town sort of goes on how the team playing at the time, and then I eventually got through and started playing first grade there. But it was like I'll be driving to the game but trying to get through the crowd from my back fence. Like I'd pull out and then I'll just be amongst the traffic trying to get to the stadium. But yeah, it was a massive goal for me. I think once it started to become more realistic when I started playing for the Knights when I was under 15s or 16s.
What was your first rugby league memory? Can you think of it? Can you think of a moment even well before you set foot in that stadium or in the training ground?
Yeah, my first game we played on the Central Coast, a place called Wyong. My mum's still got a photo of me before my first game, and I've just got a Steve Menzies headgear on, my mouth guard, shoulder pads all geared up and smiling. So I think we played that game and scored a couple of tries. And obviously my soccer career wasn't going too well at the time, so I was just like, I sort of found something that I was okay at. So I was buzzing, yeah.
And was it always going to be rugby league in the sense that, because you played for Western Suburbs as well, didn't you, before going to Newcastle? So, and I always find those moments really interesting, and even just speaking to Mark and John about that. When was the sort of moment where you as a kid, and how does that work in a kid's brain? Because obviously your parents have a big influence in this, and they think, they're talking to coaches and that this guy could make a real crack of this. But when was the moment that you thought this could be a lifetime choice?
Probably when I was about 16, 17. Like we started to come through, and there's like big competitions where all the clubs will like the academy type of stuff for 16s and 18s and stuff like that. And then, I started making the 16s and 18s New South Wales teams to play against the Queensland before the State of Origins, and it was sort of seeing a pathway there, and you're like, the people that had played that, 4 years before me, 3 years before me, were now starting to play first grade. Mm-hmm. So you're sort of seeing like, well, if I'm on that tracking path, I think, if I can maintain where I'm at and keep transitioning and progressing, hopefully I can make it to that sort of stage. Probably about 16, 17, I started seeing a sort of pathway.
And at that stage, and I guess even younger, are you a rugby league nerd? I mean, are you someone who would, because you said this.
He's a rugby league nerd now.
Flash will say that, yeah.
Yeah. No, but do you know what I mean? Are you sort of the whole kind of, the equivalent back here of Panini and football collecting stickers, and because you mentioned some names there. I mean, there's some big time ballers playing in the NRL when you would have been growing up.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was collecting stamps and stuff like that, but I loved it. Yeah, but I think I was more just I loved watching Newcastle play, and I used to go watch Western Suburbs play, Western Newcastle play, and think I'd watch this crowd and how would they react down there, and it was this thing. Well, if I could get a game and play here, that'd be unbelievable. And I remember them people celebrating 100 games for West. I was thinking that's crazy. How good is that? So it's sort of like I'd more be inclined to, driven to watch and play for, teams that I was around locally at the time, like West and then Newcastle. Then my dad was always massive in the State of Origin and get pumped up for that. So it was just sort of like stuff that sort of related to me. I was always really excited about.
How much you mentioned your dad there? I mean, because Mark, you can relate to this. How much of an influence and on a helpful side was your dad? Was he at all pushy? Was it always going to be like, come on, Luke, you're going to be an NRL player?
Not at all. He's my biggest fan, to be honest. Like he absolutely loves it, but he wasn't like. Sometimes he'd make me sort of like, there's some blokes would be on for a run now, like something like that. But he'd be dropping me little hints and stuff like that. But he wasn't in any sense.
Well, like you're getting too QB, Luke.
No. Oh, mate, I was a tubby kid, but I was always pretty fit. But yeah, he would sort of drop in little hints and stuff like that. But he was never, you got to go do this, you got to do that. I was always pretty driven and self-motivated as from a pretty young age anyway. So he didn't really have any effect on that. But he was always super supportive of me, wherever I went. And I think he'd just sort of watch me play through rosy glasses. Like, if anything, mate, you killed it there. It was very, even if I have a bad game, he'd be telling me I played good. So, massive support.
That motivation needs to be intrinsic as well, doesn't it? So, when I was growing up, my dad would like to say stuff like that, and I'd always train as well. I'd do stuff on the side. I'd do extra running, extra weights, because I think if it's just from a parent pushing you, as soon as the parent's not looking or you spend a bit of time away, you don't do those things. And I think that's got a shelf life, that kind of, not pushy parenthood, but just that kind of motivation from external factors. As soon as you're on your own, or as soon as you move to the UK, you kind of lose that push if it's not from yourself.
Yeah. Dad was never obviously pushy with me, but I'd just, we were very self-motivated and we like watching, boxers and that train. Me and a couple of mates would watch that type of stuff. So like, we just thought.
So you can box?
No, not at all. But like in terms of just, keep on top of things. Yeah. I remember when I was at Newcastle, I think I was 17, playing 18s. And I used to just think like, the harder you train, the better you're going to be. And I felt bad. I felt like unfit at a captain's run. So I went for like a 5K run after captain's run day before a game. And some of the do of the club see me on the road run day before the game and then come in and just razz me. It was like, what are you doing? I was like, I just felt unfit. I wanted to do something, you know what I mean? Like I was a bit stupid when I was a bit younger, but I just wanted to work hard. And, I think once I seen that pathway, I just wanted to do everything in my power to be able to put myself in the frame of playing first grade.
What were the other passions at this stage? Because recently we had, as Mark said, Elijah Taylor on, who unbelievably has a commercial pilot's license, and as soon as he finishes, he'll be probably flying us over to Sydney on Qantas. Amazing, really, and put all those hours in, and obviously has the brain and the capacity to be able to do that. But for example, if Luke Yates wasn't a Super League and an NRL player, what would he have been?
Mate, I have no idea. I've got a pretty good interest in like the strength and conditioning side of things, so I'm going to go and do a degree in that starting later on this year. Hopefully, get something sorted there. But I feel like I probably pigeonholed myself a lot into becoming into this rugby league player. Like once I sort of realised the dream, and I think I just invested everything into that through them years. Yeah.
Sometimes if you have a backup plan, it's too easy to fall back on it. It's too easy to kind of, if things aren't working out for you, to go, oh well, I'll just sack off and do plan B. Because I think you find a lot of people in sport that are successful put all their eggs in one basket, and then they don't have another option. They've just got to give it everything they've got. And sounds like you probably did the same thing. Yeah,
I think I've done that, but I wish I didn't. So that's why I'm trying to work on a plan B now. I'm 27 now, 27? So I've got plenty of time to get something sorted before I finish.
We'll talk about that later, because that is an interesting topic, sort of life after rugby, and when you start to think about that. And there's no textbook, is there? I mean, you guys have been lucky. You've worked your ass off, you and John, but you've got something in place. Let's rewind and go through to when you arrived at Newcastle then, and you walk through those doors and you're seeing these big players that you've watched on the telly around you, and how a young kid comes into a dressing room like that in his hometown club.
Yeah, I've come through all the grades sort of stuff, and then Rick Stone gave me my first pre-season. So I was working at the council at the time, and then
the council.
Oh, yeah, you can't just drop that one, dude. What?
Come on,
working really
council
hard.
Tax.
What were you doing?
I was working in the store, so they have like a supply store for just exclusively the council. So I'd work in the store, just sort of packing shelves, getting stuff blokes, giving some concrete or whatever it is, and then I was driving the fuel truck.
Giving some blokes some concrete.
Yeah, like the
What else is going on the
council
shelves?
concrete.
yeah, or
It
like
sounds
it was
like
just
Breaking
it was
Bad or
like
something.
inside a depot. So,
Yeah, okay.
and then I was driving the fuel truck as well. So I got my truck license and I was driving like a big diesel truck
You'd
around.
be tall enough to drive a truck.
Yeah, I had to
Need
get
a
up.
bumper seat.
Yeah, I was getting up the stairs, up and down, you know. So yeah, I played under 20s or something that year, and then Rick Stone called me and asked me if I wanted to come in and do November, December, January pre-season, and I was just absolutely buzzing. So I come in and like it was Kurt Gidley's last year at Newcastle, so I was training with him and Cade Snowden, Jeremy Smith, lads like that, and I was just over the moon to be even given the opportunity to go in there. So seeing the likes of them type of players and, you know, learning off them and seeing how they could go about their days and stuff like that was really eye-opening to me. And I think once I got a sort of a taste of it, I was just going back for more, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, when you make your Newcastle debut, and around that sort of time, is it fair to say you sort of come into a Newcastle which were struggling comparatively compared to, you know, to the size of the club?
So like I got my first preseason at 19, but I didn't play until I was 22 because so Nathan Brown come in and, you know, there was a lot talked about Brownie as he was coming in, and, you know, he said in a couple of articles about me saying he was keen to work for me. So I'm there absolutely buzzing. So I'm like, yeah, this is going to be sick. You know, I'm on this path, and yeah, he wasn't a fan. Like once we started training,
once he worked you out,
yeah,
he liked you.
How long did that
Oh
take you
yeah,
to work you out?
Yeah,
Was it the tash? Did
I
you
think
not
it was
like
the tash.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it
I
might
don't
have
know.
been
I
the
think I was, you know, a bit naive and thought, yeah, like I was working hard and all this sort of stuff, but I maybe wasn't going to that next level. And, you know, he his first preseason got us in with a group of lads at the end of the preseason and end of January, and was like, you know, thanks for all your efforts, boys, but you're all going back to part-time playing New South Wales Cup. Any of you have an issue with it, come and see me this afternoon. And, you know, we all left the room and I went and did my weights and I was just shattered. And I was on like okay enough money to not have to work, you know. So then I went in to see him. It took me a lot to go the courage to go in and see him. And I was just like, mate, there's nowhere else I'm going to get better. So I'm on a good enough money that I don't have to work. You know, I want to stay and I want to get better and learn. And I think he sort of took that as me, you know, really coming. Like he could probably tell how uncomfortable that was for me to go and do that. And so he sort of just set me sort of little goals and that for me to sort of work on. And then he's just like, so if you're going to play first grade, you need to be our fittest middle in the club. So then it sort of took me, you know, half a year to sort of get that while I'm trying to play New South Wales Cup. And then he said, now you need to be our best ruck defender. So now I went away and had to do a load of work, and it was good. It was tough love, and it was brutal honesty to me.
Well, before it sort of worked out in that sense, you'd always been a kid where people were pumping up your tyres.
Yeah,
not
it
blowing
was.
up your legs,
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was sort of like on a steady trajectory, just going, yeah, this is great. This is going to have a career. All this, like, it was just all going on really nicely. And then that was my first big setback in terms of a big reality check on, no, you're not good enough at the minute. You have to go and do this. You have to work on that. And it was tough love, but it was really good because he was honest on what, you know, I had to do, and just sort of like give me tangible things that I had to work on. So for me to go, all right, now I can go back to him, have a conversation, and go, look, now I think I'm this. What do I do next?
But that doesn't sound like it's something you just kind of accept and go, okay, I'll go away, because, you know, we all have an ego, and especially if everyone's telling you that you're great as a kid. Do you think at the time that there was an element of you thinking this is a personality thing? He just doesn't like the cut of my jib. He's not having me as a person.
Yeah, no, to be honest, because I could sort of feel the vibe off him over the last 3 months. That, you know, that he was like he was always a good.
You can
fella.
get a read off a
coach,
especially
I
Brown.
can get a good read off him. Yeah, but I was just like, I don't know what was going on. I wasn't too sure, but, you know, once he sat me down and gave me the things to work on, you know, and I feel if I hadn't had them conversations with him, I wouldn't be to where I am now, because that's mainly where I base my game off, like the defensive side and being a fit middle and stuff like that. So it's like, if them conversations never happened and he just lets me get spit back out, and then where would I be now? I'd probably be working back at the council or doing something like that.
Handing over the concrete again.
Yeah, giving out concrete. So, you know, like the tough love was exactly what I needed at the time, and the honesty. So it sort of made me who I am.
It's interesting because you said that he sort of made a few of you part-time and you had to go back and think about it. And I guess there were a lot that would just fall off the cliff at that stage, wouldn't
Well,
they?
yeah,
They
I
wouldn't go,
was
"Do you
the
know
only
what?
one that
I
went
can see a
back."
route to the top here." They would take that rejection and never advance.
Do you think he might have done that as a test?
Probably, yeah. Probably did, to be fair.
He might have said, thought in his mind, I'll tell these 5 lads they're not going to make it, and I'll see who responds or see who shows a bit of resilience and a bit of grit to have a conversation.
To be honest, he probably did, because he goes, "Go and do your weights, and if any of you want to come and see me and talk about it or dispute it, come and see me." So that's what I went and did. I didn't tell anyone I was going to go and see him, because I was pretty embarrassed at the time about what had gone on. You know, all my best mates that I'd come through with, like the Safidi boys, Josh King, Lockie Fitz, all these boys were in there doing their weights and happy as Larry, and I just had this shattering news that I was going to go back part-time, and I felt like my dream was over. So
it's a tough thing to hear, that, isn't it? I've been on the receiving end of a couple of those conversations. And it's not
Brownie?
easy, is it? Not from Brownie.
No.
Brownie liked me, actually, surprisingly. But if you dedicate your life to something, you work so hard, and then you're kind of at the mercy of one person's opinion. Every day you go to work, every day you go to training and play, you're at the mercy of your coach's decision. And when that decision doesn't go your way, it's pretty tough, isn't it?
yeah, it was tough, but in the end, it took me another 2 years to get to a point where, you know, I come into that following preseason, and then for whatever reason, he's a big fan. And like the year before, he was playing, because he picked the team first grade, reserve grade. He was playing me off the bench in reserve grade, and then I come in that next, and he played me round 1 in first grade, give my debut in New Zealand, flew my parents over. So it was just like a massive sort of turnaround for me.
But then I guess you become a sort of coach's project as well, don't you? And again, we talk about ego, and coaches have that as well. And you see this in all other industries. But kind of, well, look, I told him and he listened to me, and now look at it.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, because
Brownie's big on that as well.
Yeah,
I reckon
turning
Brownie
people
would like
around,
that,
and so I'm grateful for it. Obviously, yeah, because if he didn't give me the stern word, I wouldn't be here.
I think to probably give him some praise from my career, I think Nathan Brown was the best coach at improving you as a player. There's been lots of coaches, Watto included, Tim Sheens, who are really good at like manipulating a game plan or working on how a team plays together. But in terms of individual progression, he's really good at saying, "Flash, come here, right? If you did this a bit better, or you did that and stop doing that, you'll be miles more efficient player." And I've seen it with teammates of mine. Did a great job with John in 2013, 2014 when we didn't have a halfback. He kind of turned him into a ball-playing back rower, into someone who was an accomplished halfback in Super League. So I can see exactly what he was working on with Luke.
That was a transitional period for Saints when he was there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, probably the club wasn't working out after Royce Simmons left and Kieran Cunningham was there. No, sorry, before Kieran Cunningham. Royce Simmons, they probably didn't have too good of a period. And then there was a year of Kieran and Mike Rush as caretakers, and then Brownie, he did well for a couple of years, got us a grand final, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Confirmation bias I find really interesting in sport, because, you know, and it sounds like at the time, and your story has a happy ending with Nathan, but there would have been people who fell by the wayside, where someone makes a decision, a coach, you know, whether it be a coach, whether it be a chairman, an owner, someone on the board or whatever, and they made their decision, they're standing by it, their ego doesn't allow them to back down or whatever, and you have to make decisions and stand by them as coaches and people in power, but then they will find other reasons to justify that decision.
Yeah, it's a cutthroat industry we're in, especially as you're coming through as a young kid. They only have a certain amount of spots for young lads, development contracts and stuff like that, as they do at home. So it's like, if you're not there at that time right then, you know, you just sort of just get cut by. Each other club has their own, you know, group of kids that they're bringing through. So if you sort of miss out on them crucial years, it's quite hard to get back in, which I knew at the time. So I was like, I just wanted to invest it even more so into throwing everything at playing some good footy.
Isn't it amazing how it works out? Because all the things that you went away to work on are now, as you say, your biggest strengths. And it's almost then quite fascinating psychologically that you've gone away to prove him wrong. And now those assets are your sort of, you know, your power plays.
Yeah, that's why I'm very grateful for them type of conversations and what he said to me, because, yeah, like I said, like I wouldn't have worked on them things, and then say if another coach come in, he may have liked me, and I would have maybe fell away because I wasn't doing these things as well as what I'm doing now. I was doing when I was 22 at the time. So, yeah, it's a tough sport obviously to be involved in, but yeah, I'm just grateful I could get through.
That's why the most important facet for me as a coach is honesty. So if Brownie wasn't honest to Yatesy then and made a conversation easier by saying X, Y, and Z, and didn't give him the home truths that he'd really needed, he would have had A, an easy conversation, but B, it wouldn't have done him the best in his own development as a player. So I'd rather, if I was getting dropped, be told those reasons and given something to work on. Because some coaches, they'll just tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Like that, people don't get dropped for a flip of a coin. Like it's always going to be for a reason. And like I when I was playing first grade back home, you know, I'd get dropped every second week. You know, I played 25 games over 2 years, so I was sort of in and out of first grade anyway. But it was always, he'd give me something to work on, or he'd drop me back to reserve grade, and I'd go, I want you to do this week. You know, it was always the honest side of things that I really respected in him as well.
Do you still have a sort of little Nathan Brown in your head, like Jiminy Cricket, just sort of reminding you every day?
No, I haven't seen him for a while.
Nice.
I seen him last time I seen him was end of 2019. I went to a gym to do a class, and he was there. And he's like, it was a partner workout. He's like, me and you. He calls me Jagerbomb for some reason. I don't know why. Me and you, Jagerbomb. So
You not go up to him, have you seen my fucking ruck speed now?
nah.
Who's the man?
Nah. So it looks like he's going okay at the Warriors at the minute. So
It's not about Brownie anymore. It's all about Ian Watson.
But he was, we're sort of getting towards the time where you left Oz and you came over to London. But before we get to that, and I mentioned earlier that it was a sort of difficult time for Newcastle, 3 wooden spoons. I think they finished 11th in your last season there. And you mentioned earlier that it was excuse my geography if I'm wrong, but it's a one-club city in that sense, a one-club town.
Yeah.
You know, a bit like I'm thinking of the football equivalent of Newcastle. And you said earlier that if they win, everyone's happy, and they go into their weekend and they can have a couple of drinks, and it's that working-class mentality of like everyone's all good and it's all about the next game. But when you're losing and you're down there and things are going tits up, it's kind of that mood throughout the city can become quite toxic and poisonous.
Yeah, it does. It's the energy around the town if we're winning games is unbelievable, and everyone's loving you and patting you on the back. But then, say if you lost a few on the bounce and then you're out, people are messaging into the CEO going, why is Luke Yates having a beer? Why he shouldn't be doing this? You know, trying to like get you in trouble and stuff like that. So yeah, it's in your best interest to be playing good footy. But yeah, obviously when I come through at them times, you know, we had a very, very young team. I think the average age of our team was like 23, 24. That first year when I came in, we got the spoon, and then they recruited very well and got Ponga in and Mitchell Pearce in, which was a massive up for us, which was, we could see the sort of progression of where the team was going. So it was a bit more, we were a bit more liked, I guess, in the town at that second year that I was there.
Do you literally get a wooden spoon?
Yeah, I think that's a typical thing that
Stir
other
your
fans
concrete
give
with that,
you.
mate.
Yeah.
Like a big cauldron of...
Yeah,
Go
it
back to the shelves
it
and
gets
pack
chucked
them with
around. Yeah. When you're on Mad Monday and you're not feeling too great, someone just brings a wooden spoon. It's not great.
That scrutiny then, because obviously you've experienced both, and not necessarily just struggling over here, but how much more intense is it in the NRL? I mean, I know, Mark, you play for West Tigers over there, but when it's not going your way, is it magnified in Australia compared to what you would get here?
Yeah, big time. Because it's like it's the biggest sport over there. Like it's like the football over here. So like soccer. Yeah, the soccer. I'm trying to learn. Yeah, so it's the magnifying glass is always on the rugby league and who's playing well, who's not. But typically for me at that time, I wasn't a big time player. No one's taken their anger out on me, giving me sprays on social media. So I was pretty well and safe from that. But I could understand what the criticism the boys in my team were getting. Like the top players were obviously copping it pretty heavily, but.
Well, like you said,
Likes
they
of
are
myself,
like
I wasn't copping anything, and I don't cop anything here, so it's pretty
well,
like the
I don't know,
same.
you've got a captain's armband now. But that's a good comparison, because Elijah said that as well, didn't he? And obviously he's captain of Salford, but that kind of that magnifying glass, that intensity is a lot more rife, and people will make your life hell. You're like a Premier League player, and you have to have that robust side to your character. And I'm not saying you don't have to have that here as much, but it's a smaller bubble.
It is, but I think depending on what position you play and the type of player you are, you probably avoid
if you're a
it.
flair guy, you're going to get shit.
Yeah, and I think if similar like myself, Luke, Elijah Taylor, all loose forwards who tackle and try hard. But if you give it your all every week, the supporters usually
if you're
give
trying
you a
hard,
pass.
If you're trying hard, they're typically not going to have a go at you. I think it's more spine players that aren't firing. But for lads like us that are going out there and making your tackles and tying in and having your carries, I don't think there can be too much criticism about young lads just doing their best.
So why did it come to an end in the NRL? Because you've painted this picture that, the stadium was over your back fence, it was the dream, you're there, you get the shot in the first team. All right, the team was struggling. Was Nathan Brown to do with it ending, or how did that moment come where you came to London?
It was a bit of a. I was very disappointed on how my second year went there. So I'd played 19 games the first year and then 6 the second, and I without being arrogant, I felt like I could have offered more and picked for more games. So I was sort of not upset and bitter about things, but I just felt like I could offer more. So I wanted to leave Newcastle because Brownie was staying there. I didn't want to go around another year of doing that to myself. But then the opportunity to come over to the UK, because you have to play 50% of your last 2 years in the NRL to be able to qualify for a visa. So I'd played bang on that, and I was like, well, do I risk going to a Sydney club and then not playing 19 games that following year and then never be able to come to the UK? So I sort of me and my agent were talking about UK and coming over here, and then my brother lived in London at the time, just on his working visa, just like traveling and stuff like that, and so was my best mate. And then I didn't keep up to date too much of the Super League at all, and then London offer came through and was like, oh, they're in Super League now. Do you want to go and play over there? And I just thought that makes just so much sense. Like I felt like it was just like me walking in here today, just meant to be. So yeah, I just jumped at that opportunity. Like I'd only just come back from traveling Europe for a month with one of my best mates, and then thought I was probably never going to come back. And then a month later, I was moving over here. So
at that time that you joined London Broncos, did that feel like a sort of a regression in your career, in the sense that it is London Broncos, it's not the NRL? What did sort of family, friends, colleagues, teammates make of that?
Everyone was super supportive, to be honest. It didn't feel like a step down at all. Like I was always keen to come and play the Super League, but probably wasn't as keen at 24. I really wanted to stay and play in the NRL, but then moving away from home, like it's not like I could still live at home and drive to a city.
It'd be a tough commute from Newcastle to London.
Yeah. So I was like, if I'm going to move away from Newcastle, like I would have to move to Sydney at the closest. So it's like, move to Sydney, I might as well move to London.
Did you feel at that stage that you needed to prove things to people? Did you feel like it was a case of, a fresh start? Did you feel lost at all? What were the emotions at the time of that move?
I was just very, I was quite lost, I think, at the time, and I was just sort of looking for the next thing and wanted another challenge, I think, and I think that them coming up and then being offered to me with my brother and my best mate living there just made too much sense for me to sort of turn down. And coming over here and yeah, I didn't know how long I was going to stay at London. Obviously, I only signed a 1-year deal, but it just seemed like a exciting sort of prospect for me to go and live in London and be able to play these Super League teams. And that I was really very curious on what it would be like over here, and I'm so glad I came.
Do you keep Brownie informed on how well you were doing? Like every time you scored or man of the match?
Well, you were top tackler and player of the season, weren't you?
Yeah.
You let him know? No.
No, I didn't let him know. I didn't let him know. I don't think he's
in your head.
I don't think he's following the London Broncos too much. But.
Well, that season, I guess it sort of fits into because they were underdogs, weren't they? And they performed admirably. Obviously, got relegated, and have been one of those clubs, haven't they? Kind of, there's plenty of football equivalents, Mark. Of
they were
teams going up and down.
They were everyone's second team, I think, that season. Because one thing I really admired is that they kept the nucleus of the team that got them promoted in that first year of Super League. It would have been very easy for them to get rid of all the lads that got them up and sign some overrated Aussies and just kind of buy a new team, but they didn't really do that. They signed a few players to kind of enhance the performance, Luke being one of them. But and the style of rugby that they played, and the fact they only got relegated on the last day of the season, didn't they? There was a 3 or 4 team tussle between who was going to get relegated, and that season it seemed like the performances on the field were every player playing to the best, but you had a real camaraderie and a real team first mentality.
It was great, to be honest. Like I think they did the right thing in giving the people that got them to the dance the opportunity to play Super League, because them guys have been there for the couple of years building up and then getting the opportunity. That obviously give them a chance. But like we only used 3 of our visa spots like down there with us lads. So it was like we had the opportunity to sign people, but I think they did the right thing in giving them opportunity to like them to play. But it was just such a great experience. And like down there, I've never been part of a more close-knit group. And I think that sort of showed on the field. We definitely weren't the most talented group of players in any sense of like the Super League. But I think just our togetherness of the group, you know, everyone's northern or come from Australia, whatever. So we all lived in Ealing. Barely any of us drove because there's no point having a car down there. So it was just like we all lived in this little bubble, and it was like go to training, come back, and there's 20 lads that are out for a coffee, or you go to the game, the whole squad's out for a beer. It was just so good because like now, like living up here, like everyone lives. I play at Huddersfield, but I live in Manchester. It's just, you know, everyone's sort of apart. But there was just such good togetherness.
That's what Manchester's like. You can hear the sirens going on.
They're coming for Will.
London, do you?
They're coming for you.
Salford, everyone. No, that's interesting because I live in Ealing now, and I remember all the you know, the Broncos fans getting off the tube there at the station, whether they're, you know, Leeds fans coming down to away games or whatever. And it's a completely different dynamic, isn't it? You've come from an environment where, you know, in New South Wales, where it's, you know, a heartland of rugby league. And
we'll come in last and getting 20,000 to every game average. Yeah.
But again, you're in a city like London where, I'm not saying Mark walks down the street here and he gets mobbed. I mean, you know, maybe if you walk through Salford Precinct, that might happen a couple of years ago when you got to the grand final. But those days are gone, Mark. But like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like you've come to London where rugby league is unknown to the majority of people in the capital.
Yeah, massive city, and you're getting 3,000 to a game if you're really lucky. So, but I think that was quite a nice change. Not saying that I was getting recognised everywhere I'd walk in Newcastle. Like everyone sort of has a good idea who the Knights players are and that. But it was just a nice change to be just a nobody. Like going around the city and exploring and hanging out with your mates, and you can go for a beer without getting bloody sledged or something like that. So, it was a nice change.
How do you like London, like one of the biggest cities in the world, so much going on, compared to a lad who's out at Newcastle, which is, in comparison, poles apart?
I loved it, absolutely loved it. It was quite tough in terms of...
You can't say you like London on a podcast. Most people, you've lost 95% of the audience, mate.
It was it was hard, like I said, because I lived with my brother and my best mate, and they weren't there to be professional sports people. They were. It was my house.
So they were dragging you out all the time.
My house was a bit of a circus, and I had to, you know, it took me a little bit into the season to sort of pull my head in and sort of realise why I'm there. I'm not there for a holiday, so. That was probably a pretty big challenge for me. But like, obviously, they were very respectful of me playing footy and really supportive of me, but. You know, they're not there to play footy, so they're there to have a good time. Our flat was quite loud, but yeah, I love living in London, and I would love to go back there at some stage and end a career to help them out or something like that.
What did you learn from the sort of mental side of your game? What was added to that? And I've said the word underdog, trying to sort of get you to bite in that sense, but you know, no one believed in London, and a lot of people didn't believe in the project or weren't buying into it and whatever. And it's, you know, there are comparisons with Toronto and other models of, you know, Toulouse and Catalan initially. But did you feel that kind of from Super League fans, of just that everyone was not really having the Broncos?
No, I felt quite like I felt the love from other teams, and like when we would play teams up here, you know, like I'd speak to lads after the game, and they're sort of going, geez, I hope you boys stay up. Like, always very supportive. But I think the biggest change for me and learning curve for me was, you know, I'm playing at Newcastle and I'm sort of on that lower, in between first grade and reserve grade. So I was very, you know, selfish on my own performance and trying to play as best as I can to sort of get my spot in that 17 every week. And then I moved to London, and then I've sort of come to a spot where we've got some players who are fringe Super League players and, you know, aren't performing too great. And then it's more about trying to help them guys be better players and sort of being more selfless and trying to get a team together and make sure we're playing better. So it was a bit of a transition between being super stressed about my own sort of performance in my own week and thinking purely about myself to trying to get the team performing and everyone happy and everyone performing and ready for the weekend's game.
So 2020, you come to Salford and you meet Mark Flanagan. I mean, you don't know much about him at this stage. You know, you've played against him with the Broncos. He's sort of fine-looking
I thought he was Aussie. I thought, because he played with the West Tigers and I came out, I thought he was Australian for some reason.
He's got that sort of air.
Because he bases his cafe like it's an Australian cafe. That's what's really weird. And I was like, he's an Australian lad. And then,
but he's got that sort of, you know, Prince-like looks, isn't he? Sort of, you know, if he didn't speak, you'd think this guy has got something. You know, like when
and
you
then
first,
I'm really underwhelming.
yeah, you speak to me, you're a bit like, I've got to wash my dog's hair in half an hour. I've got to take
How
the shoot
boring.
off.
Flash was really, really nice to me from the bat. I think I got added to the WhatsApp and, you know.
when he signed for the club, so we have a WhatsApp group with all your players, and then the coaches will put the new players' numbers in the official club WhatsApp group for training times and all that sort of stuff. And I was the admin, so I then put all the new signings into the group.
Oh, and you kick the other ones out you've left.
Yeah, there you go as well. They're dead to me. Anyway, Luke got added to the group and then decided that weekend to have a few beers. And whilst having a few beers, he decided to call out all the other players, his new teammates, giving everybody shit.
Yeah.
And then his first day of training
I think
was really, really awkward.
Yeah, that was probably the worst first day ever at Salford. I felt like, mate, the anxiety the next day of me waking up after them beers, I was in some trouble. But
who were you calling out, Luke?
No, I wasn't calling out anyone. I was just carrying on, you know. I was just trying to make some friends.
Trying to make some friends, trying to have a few jokes, but yeah, it was.
I don't think it went down too
didn't
well.
go down
But
that well.
Flash got around
I had
it.
his back.
He liked it.
Flash got around it, and then he sort of put his arm around me when I got there because I think he could
not
tell.
Actually, if he did, show us on the doll where he touched you, and we can. We do have an HR department.
It's hard to get your arm around a cube. It's kind of just halfway down his back, I think.
It's flat on the side of his face.
Yeah.
So, no, did you get the impression that Mark was sort of a 50-50 captain? Because I mean, we've been over this a few times, Mark, haven't you? But he's sort of, you know, he told us that he was captain, and then we found out that he was kind of a joint captain. And then Lee Mossop sort of said it was more 80-20, Lee less 50-50. I mean, you were in the dressing room. How did Mark's captaincy feel like?
There were different types of leaders. I'd say Lee was probably the main man in 2020 when I was there.
Oh,
but Flash was obviously the more subtle touch and putting your arm around lads when their heads were gone, like he did to me. But no, Flash was a great leader on and off the field.
Yeah. What was the difference then? The big difference coming from London into Salford, into that dressing room. Ian Watson, a team that had been to the grand final, obviously COVID times as well. There were all sorts of challenges.
There was a lot of pressure. I remember because I signed up there mid-year and I wasn't too sure how things were going to go with them, and then they ended up making the grand final and coming back in, going, geez, like we're on for another big year. We ended up making Challenge Cup final and stuff like that. But it was definitely a step up in terms of training and players and stuff like that. Like coming from London, it was more modelled to like an NRL type of schedule and training wise, but I think then the cold had hit me from Manchester and coming down south was a bit of a struggle.
Accent change.
Yeah. I actually really struggled with northern lads. There was a lot of northern lads down there that I'd just sit there and blankly just say yeah.
But I mean, at the time, I'm just thinking. Obviously, it was sort of post serious lockdown, wasn't it? But around that time when you're moving clubs, and there was all sorts of scaremongering going around with clubs, not necessarily Salford.
We
but
were
Super League was
2020. 2020, it was the height.
16 weeks.
It was the height of the lockdown. So we were training from home, and I think Luke was sleeping at Ian Watson's house, so he was probably doing drills in the back garden with Watto.
I had the tackle bag at home, yeah.
But yeah, it was tough. It was tough as a player that time because you're at home, you're given a schedule or suggested training methods to do, and you're kind of left to your own devices, aren't you? And I think that's one thing I was really proud of that year was that when we came back from the lockdown, we performed really well and got to a Challenge Cup final. And I think that was all attributed to the character of our players that we were willing to train when no one was watching. It was just up to our own motivation to get it done, and I think that was one reason why we had some real good success.
Yeah, we were struggling, to be fair, before the lockdown. I think we were 0-5 initially. We beat Toronto, but then they got taken off us. Yeah, but like we weren't nowhere near performing what we thought we were gonna be. And then lockdown was probably the best thing that happened. Obviously, disaster, what happened in the world and whatnot. But for us and our team, as we come back, we hit the ground running.
Was that a sign of Ian Watson? And like Mark says, you're Ian Watson's sort of teacher's pet. We'll get onto that in a second. Yeah. But was that a sign of the man who you're now working with, of course, at Huddersfield? I actually remember bumping into him in another PKB, Mark. I think it's PKB that's no longer with us. So what do we call that? 2.5, the one that's
Spinningfields.
Yeah, Spinningfields. And he was going through. This was again sort of. Not, obviously, we were in a coffee shop at the time, but just opening up and post the sort of serious lockdown in COVID, and he was going through specific things for people like Paulie, who I think at the time had become Paulie. Not that we're fat shaming him, but you know he needed to be on a serious regime, otherwise I don't think he would have had a contract there at the time. But you know, like he was very hands-on during that time. You learn a lot about a coach and what you want from a coach during a quite weird time.
Watson is a massive control freak, and he loves rugby. He eats, breathes, sleeps rugby. So for him, it was really tough because he wanted to do stuff. He wanted to do video with the players. He wanted to do drills. But I think it was more a reflection of our conditioner. He managed to keep us fit by suggesting these sessions, and it was just, I think, the mentality of the players to keep working when we didn't really have to, did we?
Yeah, we didn't have to. I think it was just a commitment as a team, and more so to each other, because we knew when we come back in, like, what did we come back in? We had like a week training, then we were playing a game. So it's like, if you weren't in good nick, you're going to struggle, and if you're lagging, you're going to let the team down anyway. So you're sort of just putting your best foot forward for the team and for yourself to be playing as you get back in. Yeah, but it was definitely a tough time for us. But I think it brought us all together. Like, we'd do some quiz nights. And
I organise a quiz night every Friday.
On Zoom.
Big Marky was good on that. Yeah.
That's original. No one else did that during lockdown.
I nip to the shop and get 12 bottles of Corona. And
You're the best.
I'm the best. I drink 2.
So when you first laid eyes on Ian Watson, were there sort of Cupid and love hearts flying around? Was there sort of stars going around in your head? What was?
When I can remember the moment that their eyes met across the room. It was a beautiful moment.
Same sort of height.
Similar height. That's why he was at everyone's groin level, and they just caught each other's eye, and just love hearts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He's not denying it, is he?
Yeah. That was it.
Oh no, you're just taking the piss out of me. But yeah, I think me and Wada have a mutual respect between each other. And I had interest for coming to Salford before I signed to London. It's just they didn't have a visa spot to clear. So then he was sort of like, I had communication with him then, spoke about coming up the following season, then sort of when we were mid-year, and then we had another chat. So
how does that work? That's really interesting, actually, because obviously in football years ago that used to be banned, the whole kind of tapping up thing. But obviously, that's just how recruitment works these days. And it's difficult for Salford because at times they're in relegation battles, not necessarily under Ian Watson, where you can't recruit, you don't know, and players aren't going to come until they know for sure they're going to be playing Super League.
To be honest, like, I remember I was talking to a few clubs at the time when I was at London, and then my agent was like, "Oh, Ian Watson wants to have a talk to you on the phone," and I was like, "All right," but at the time, I really didn't want to go to Salford.
What did you say? All right, yeah, you say.
Why is that?
Wasn't. I don't know. I had some other things in the works that I was a lot more keen on than Salford, and then I had a conversation with him for about 40 minutes, and I was just completely sold.
Really?
Yeah.
So go on, take us inside that meeting.
It's just the mentality that he wanted to play with, and like how passionate he was, and you could just tell he just loved it. And then me being a rugby nerd, like these boys would say, that sort of just fired me up, and I was like, you just feel like you could just run out and die for this lad. Like,
so
the way
is that sort of specific things that he knew about you as
well?
No,
just more or less little things that he knew about me, and he does his homework on players when he recruits, doesn't he? But I think just the way he speaks about the mentality that he wants to play and the style of play, how they're trained, why they do the things, like it's very in depth, and you can tell when you speak to him, he knows. I don't think he sleeps, the lad, but he knows exactly what he's speaking about, and he's sure on his things. He's not really blasé. He's like, oh, we could do this, do that. He's just like, this is how it's going to be. And I think, obviously, like with Salford probably not being the most cash to the club or anything like that, going to a grand final and then going to a Challenge Cup final, the sort of the proof's there that he's got a pretty good idea what he's doing. Yeah.
Yes. I love that, because you went into the meeting then essentially like, I'll go to the meeting, see what you got to say, but not really thinking you were going to be convinced.
He completely sold me.
And you were sold in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
The power of Ian Watson. Was there a PowerPoint presentation? What was the?
No, it was just a phone call. It was just a phone call.
With
Were there things to put in your drink? Were there any kind of?
No, I remember I was just
witchcraft?
walking around upstairs in the house just on the phone, and it's like,
he's probably the most passionate coach I've played for.
Really?
Yeah. And do you know what? If as a player, I think you're prepared to invest time in pre-season or work hard if you see those around you doing the same. And I'd always get in early for training, but he was always the first in and last to leave. And when you see your leader acting in that way, it's easy to buy him into what he's doing. And he's, like I said, his passion, his vision, and his man management in order to get teams up for a game is second to none, really.
And look, you had a good run, because obviously you'd seen this team, and I imagine you watched that grand final against Saints, Mark's old team. You put
I was up early. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Were you back in Oz watching
Yeah, I was back home. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of seen the potential of where he'd taken them to and from, and then obviously you guys had a run to a Challenge Cup final.
Yeah. It's exciting times. Obviously playing at Wembley with no crowd was a bit of a weird one. Probably not what you
That's
want.
Awful, to be fair. That is.
Yeah.
Let's face it, that is.
Yeah, it was
shocking.
It was, but you'd rather be there than not.
Yeah.
But yeah,
could
What
and should have
was
won
that day like?
It was you asked Luke earlier about his first memory of rugby league. My first memory of watching a rugby league match was a Challenge Cup final, St Helens between Bradford. I think it was 1995. So from that moment, I'd always dreamed of playing in the Challenge Cup final at Wembley in front of 80,000 people. Now that came true in my last season, but there was 8 people watching, most of them stewards.
Even I couldn't get a ticket.
Yeah, I know. So it was amazing to get there, but it kind of takes the gloss up.
Did they
like,
put a
more
bit
than
of
gloss.
like canned crowd noise in as you were coming out? Like, yeah, you're the best,
Salford, not you though,
Salford.
Mark.
I remember when we got there the day before for a walk around, and there's a sign as you walk onto the pitch, and it said, "Where players come and legends are born." So I was just like, you just sort of like come and you like seeing like the atmosphere and the history of Wembley, and you're like, this is insane. But then you get there and it's, you know, obviously you're pumped up for the game. You used to play in front of no crowds in 2020, but it was quite anticlimactic. Like it was just like the buzz of things was zapped very quickly once the kickoff sort of started.
I think in a
us.
big game you feed off the crowd, and that it has a bearing on the result. Whether you're winning or losing, fans can get on top of you or behind you, and it really can swing the momentum of a match. But obviously, it didn't have a bearing, and we lost by a point.
You still do a little few crowd waves and things. Like,
Always
you know,
do that.
Yeah, Dele Alli celebration when you did that one.
Did that
It
one.
was a rough train ride home, that.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, but it was. But it was a rough sort of moment leaving Salford, wasn't it? Because like you left with, 2 years on your contract, just signed a new deal. Again, the power of Ian Watson. He gave you another PowerPoint presentation to take you to Huddersfield.
Come on, son. Come over the
Come on,
pitch
you got a
with me.
bit of shit from the Salford fans, didn't you? I mean, like Mark, you know the ferocities of those Salford fans when they want to get in
They were a
on
big
you.
fan of Mark's.
Yeah, they like me. 'Cause
You won them round, didn't you? I think in the end a little bit.
Yeah, they probably still don't know who I am. But yeah, that sport, it can go one or two ways. You can get let go by a club, like Luke alluded to earlier, or you can kind of take the power you want and push your career in a certain direction. So it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah,
How selfish do you have to be there, Luke? Then in terms of, sorry, I interrupted you, but in terms of, you're thinking about your progression. Like, you have no real loyalty to Salford. You'd been there for 18 months or whatever it was, and got to a Challenge Cup final. But you're a young lad, and at the time mid-20s, and you're thinking about the next step and what's best for you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go on to. Like it was a tough one, but I didn't. Without this sound about, like, I signed to Salford for Watto. Like the way he spoke to me, and then the mentality instilled in the players. I knew I wanted to play for him, and I'd signed a contract under him, and then everything was going great, and then until it wasn't. Like it was a day after Mad Monday, and he calls me. He's like, "I'm going. Do you want to come with me?" And I was like, sort of sat there, and I was like, "Well, I don't really, rugby league career is a very short time, and I didn't want to be somewhere that I wasn't happy for the next 2 years, sitting there going, I wish I wasn't, I wish I'd gone with Watto when I had the opportunity to." So the clubs worked that out between themselves, and I'm very grateful I got the opportunity to.
Was that meeting less than 40 minutes? That one.
That meeting, yeah, that
4
was
seconds.
Oh,
I'm going.
Yeah. Oh, it was about an 8-week negotiation to try and get out of it, which was the most stressful time of my bloody.
That was
my life. Yeah, it was tough.
A lot of litigation, a lot of meetings and lawyers and stuff. Yeah.
No, not lawyers, but yeah, it's just me agent carrying on. But
well, because there was a fee, wasn't there, that Huddersfield had to pay? Because obviously you had 2 years on the contract.
Yeah. That was sort that out between themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. You go, Mike. You were going to say something?
No, I'm just saying it's ironic that players asked to leave a club, but then also players are asked to leave the club when they've got time on the contract. I was in that position not that long ago where they said, "Oh, you've got time on your contract, but we'd like you to leave." But no one kind of gives shit to the clubs. But if it happens the other way, a player who's put in the exact opposite situation, they can get a lot of abuse. So yeah, I'm a bit obviously on the side of players in that respect.
And you were where at this stage? I'm just trying to think time-wise when Luke was on his way. Towards the end of your just about you were still there.
Yeah, I was still there. Yeah.
It
But obviously
was your last year.
My last year. Yeah.
But as in, like, so you lose a player like that, obviously, who's got a trajectory, and Salford had gone through a period of that, hadn't they? Of players coming in, and I guess it works both ways, doesn't it? Not that the players are using them, but they're getting the talents of these guys as well. Over a
players
period
get
of
used
season.
just as much as clubs get used, if not less so. So yeah.
Yeah. So Huddersfield. Let's talk about Huddersfield. I mean, what's it like being there now with Ian Watson? You're going well as we're recording this, and another new project for you, 27. still not at your peak, are you, as a player?
No, I wouldn't think so. I hope not.
And skipper?
Skipper, yeah.
Yeah.
So we skipper straight. He went, this is it. You're going to be captain. Come with me.
Oh,
Off we
well, I was
go.
there last year, so I had last year with the lads, and which was a bit of a difficult year. You know, we had a couple of our senior players get injured and suspended and stuff like that, so we had a lot of money not playing. So it was good in a way for young lads to get the opportunity to play, and then we recruited really well with Chris Hill, Tio Fage, Tui, Seb, all coming in, Danny Levi. So we recruited really quality, lads and footy players. So
That's one of Ian's strengths, isn't it?
Yeah. Because if he sold me on coming, like he can sell a club and he can sell a vision, I think, on people. And I think what we've sort of done now through the pre-season and the way we're sort of working, it's very early days. We haven't done anything yet, but we're on the right direction. Yeah.
And can you pinpoint any one or couple of factors that have really come to the fore this season as opposed to last season?
I think with the buy-in of the players, we had a lot of negativity and whatnot go on last year, but I think with the lads that Watto's brought in, typically a lot of them he's worked with before, like 4 out of the 5 he's worked with before, so they know Watto, what he's like, and they're keen just to buy in straight away, and then then we can work on a team and start working more tactical sort of stuff. So I'd say that's probably the major one on buy-in by the players and wanting to play in the same way. And we speak a lot about not trying to get the individual accolades and trying to be more of a team player and trying to do something for someone else. And that's sort of the way we're playing at the minute.
What does it mean to you to be a captain? And had you been a captain at youth level anywhere before? Is this a first experience for you?
Yeah, I used to be a captain at I think under 16s and 18s at Knights. But yeah, it means a lot. Obviously, we did it as a vote, and the players voted me as the captain. So I think that means a lot, other than what I just saying, you're my man sort of thing. So it's nice to
You meant boy blue?
yeah, it was nice to get the backing off the players and them to believe in me to lead them, and it's definitely not something that I take lightly. I want to be the best version of myself for them and be a good leader for them.
What does that mean to you, leadership? Because you would have worked under so many different captains, different styles of people. I mean, Mark as a half captain, you could count as well. Quarter captain at Salford. But in all seriousness,
he's a wanker, isn't he?
Leadership is quite a subjective word, isn't it? Because John Wilkin could be called a leader to a certain degree, and some people wouldn't want to follow him off a cliff or anywhere. But
Are you a leader?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But you know what I mean? You need different skills to be a leader, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's what you sort of bring to the table, and I'm a hard-working sort of forward. I'm sort of trying to do them tough sort of things for the team and trying to do something for other people. So I think the lads see that as me working hard, and I try and be a role model for these younger lads that are trying to follow in them sort of footsteps. But as a leader, I don't really know what type of leader I am at the minute. I'm pretty young into it, and I've got a lot of good sort of influences at the club of former captains and state of origin players and people that have made grand finals and stuff like that. So I've made a bit of a leadership group with them lads, and I just sort of ask for advice off them. And I sort of struggle a bit with. I sort of want to be very aggressive on things, and this is how you do it. But it's probably not the way to do them. To be a leader nowadays, you need to be a bit more of a softer touch, like Mark was when he was at Salford.
You call me soft ass.
No, not soft, but put your arm around lads, and it's sort of just knowing your individual. So I'm very young into being in that position, but it's not something that I take lightly. Like I said, I want to be a good leader. So it's just sort of working out, but I'm always just down to hard work anyway. So I think if I'm doing my hard work and I'm putting in for the team, I think people are going to see that, and I'm not going to ask someone to work really hard if I'm not. I wouldn't ask someone to do something that I don't already do.
That's the most important attribute of a good leader is working hard and leading by example and doing. You see James Roby at Saints, he must inspire all his teammates by what he does, because you can't talk a good game without doing. And having played with Luke, I know. You know exactly what you're getting when you take the field with him. It's 100% commitment, and I'm sure he inspires his teammates at Huddersfield by doing that week in, week out.
Because leadership groups are now a thing, aren't they? I mean, they weren't. I don't maybe tell me if I'm wrong in rugby league, but certainly in other sports and in football, and you've seen that come in potentially over the last sort of 10, 15 years, and you see it in the NFL, and you see, like, we have 2, 3, 4 captains. Pep Guardiola talks about it at Manchester City. It doesn't matter who's wearing the armband, it's a leadership group. You kind of need your lieutenants around you. Back in the day, you would have your captain, and what he said went.
Yeah, I think it's really important because you get different outlooks and different opinions on things. Where it's like the other week, I wanted to come in. I spoke to a leadership group about something, and then they sort of said, maybe a bit of a softer touch would be better, and trying to stay positive and trying to talk about that week as being a good building week into something. So it's like, it's good because I might be set on something as I drive into training, and then have a conversation with our leadership group, and then it'll completely sort of sway me into a different direction. So I think it's really important because you get a good feedback from them 5, 6 guys before you go to the group with something. So you sort of know that you got them 6 lads on board who are typically more influential players in your group. So if they're on board with things, they can drive things alongside with you. So I think it's more powerful.
So it's you're basically like the Boris Johnson of Huddersfield. It's like being a politician, isn't it? You got your cabinet. Who's your chancellor of the Exchequer?
Boris.
I talk like Chris Hill was captain at Warrington, and then we've got Leroy and Bruno who are Huddersfield captains, and from the area which are really strong roots. We've got Chris McQueen, who's played State of Origin and grand finals at home, and TFR's who's won the 3 at Saints the last 3 years. And then I got Ollie Russell because I think it's important to have a young lad in there, but I see him as probably the next sort of leader of Huddersfield when I'm finished up there. So I try and get a good sort of gauge from all them lads.
That's a big rap on Ollie.
Yeah, big time. I love playing with Ollie. He's a really tough competitor, always wants to get better, and I think he's probably the future of our club.
Good stuff. He's an Oldham lad like me. There you go.
The best. Aren't
We're the best.
It feels like you have to get rid of all your insecurities as a captain, or at least not, disguise them. Maybe make sure they're not visible, because they can drag you down. I mean, I imagine paranoia can kick in as a captain at times.
I don't get too paranoid, but I feel like I can't be too set in my ways. Like I feel like a group's opinion is a lot better than, say, my own, or I'm not too egotistic to be like, this is how it's going to be, and no one challenged me. Like, I want to be challenged, and I want the best for what the group. I want the best for the group. So, if someone's got a suggestion, put your hand up. Like, I'm happy to take on all feedback and try and be the best version of myself.
But there's no segregation. It was in when you're captain, is it like, he's the captain, particularly with the younger guys?
Oh, no, not at all.
The important thing is to have everyone on board.
Yeah, we have a great group at Huddersfield. Like, I love going to training, and I think for what we had last year with so many young players playing, it sort of put them lads, whereas they typically maybe not would have got the games if we had everyone in, but now all them lads have got the confidence, and now I've built relationships with them lads. So now it's we're all friendly with each other, and they know they can come to me. I'm not going to be aggressive to them. Like, everyone can have a laugh. We like I said, we've got such a great group there.
Yeah. What's sort of in the list of priorities if we were to go into Ian Watson's email chains and look at it in terms of what he wants to do at Huddersfield? I mean, you guys are into a Challenge Cup semi-final for the first time in 10 years after beating Hull. It's about just sort of box ticking and progressing and going forward, particularly after a tough season last season.
Yeah, it's about, Huddersfield have been starved of trophies for years and years, haven't they? So I think we're a big club, and it should be, like I said to our lads before the Challenge Cup game on the weekend, so I don't want to talk about too in-depth stuff now, but I was like, we don't get another shot at this, boys. It's like, if we can't keep going next year, and all of a sudden we're gone. It's not that group anymore. So it's like, we've got a good enough group now. Let's start being driven to win trophies now. So, we're in that semi-final coming up, but it's looking for wins now and getting up top of that table and challenging for titles.
What do the next 5 years look like for you? Because you've got 5 really good years still in your peak, haven't you? I mean, I don't know if you've even thought about an age, and we'll finish kind of on life after rugby and whatever, but I always kind of ask this question to all sorts of sportsmen and women, like when they're done, when you're marking, you're cooked and you're over the hill and grey hairs are starting to come in, and, do you want to look back and have done something in particular, something specific, or is it more kind of attributes as a person and as a player?
Yeah, I definitely want to win trophies. That's probably the top of my heap. I don't want to have played for so many years and then gone, he was great here, played here, captain there, whatever, but then he never sort of won anything. I feel like that's something I can sort of go, look, yeah, I did that. Like Flash has won his grand final and
Playing halfback.
yeah,
You told
playing
you
half. Like that's massive. Like and you can talk about that
bore
forever. That's
everybody
always,
forever.
that never leaves you, does it? So it's like I want something of like that of my own. I feel like we've got a good enough group, and for over the next 5 years to try and make a bit of a dynasty and sustaining success at Huddersfield.
He got in there as well, stopped the whole Ben Flower thing going off, didn't he? You were right.
You got lucky there, didn't
first
you?
one in
You
there.
played 12 lads and never
Hey.
lost, didn't you?
Hey,
I was at halfback. That's like
Yeah.
being down to
So it's
11
12,
then for us.
it's like 12 versus
Yeah.
12 then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job I didn't throw any though. Oof.
that is deadly.
Oof, I would've
So
been
go on.
sent
Look, again, we talked about sort of going towards the end of the career, but you mentioned about going to strength and conditioning, all that sort of thing. I mean, clearly the way you talk, and I could see you went into captain mode there and went into kind of like it was a pre-match press conference. We saw a change in Luke. It's interesting. You sort of speak like a coach, and you're fascinated by coaches. And I imagine sort of, and I'm being serious in the sense that Watto could put on an hour-long sort of analytical display, and I can imagine you at the front with your eyes lit up. I mean, that's for some players, it's not for others, isn't it? But I can.
I'll be
So
sitting there with my
essentially, I'm
notebook.
saying, are we going to see
Yeah,
Luke
he'd have
Yates
his
as a
notebook
coach
out.
in Super League one day or in the NRL, or is that? What?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't rule it out. Like I want to go and do the strength and conditioning sort of stuff, but I would definitely be keen on giving coaching a go. I'll go do my courses and stuff like that because I might as well do something that I'm passionate about. So I'm massive about rugby league and strength and conditioning side. So I want to go and do a degree just to get that behind me, have that in the back pocket, and then sort of see where life takes me from there. But I've been over here for 4 years. Next year into 5, you can get my residency. So
resident.
yeah, so I'm lucky with my
How do we
partner,
get you
Lucy.
to swear allegiance to the Queen? What were the tests
I
these
think
days to become a
it's
Brit?
test and a lot of cash, I think.
Yeah. Just pay. And
Yeah,
you're
We
in.
don't
I think you
want
just
him.
pay your way.
Yeah.
We don't want him. If he
How
wants cash, he can
unromantic
fuck
is
it.
that? We should at
I
least.
think it is a test. Well, my mum did the citizenship for Australia, and that was the hard test for her. So I think to come over, I think I'll have to study up, but
Yeah.
Lucy will give me a hand.
Well, I was about to say, because your missus is watching on, so you've got to be careful what you say. But you see, you see your future in this. You love it over here. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of changed your life since you came to London, really,
Yeah,
isn't it?
definitely.
He's moving to Oldham.
Are you?
Yeah,
Have you reconsidered
he's
that?
given me
Speak
the
to me
green
afterwards.
light.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, he's giving me the green light, Flash.
Allowing it.
Yeah, I love it over here, and I've got my partner over here, and I feel like I've got a family over here now, so it's great. So I'm in no rush at all to go back home. We're not shutting the door completely, but we're buying a place and sort of settling down a bit. For
So
the
you
next
say
couple-
this, Luke, but I've seen it with so many players. You
Yeah,
start
so many
performing
players,
like that,
yeah.
and suddenly the big lights of the NRL come flashing.
Sound like Vince McMahon.
It's supposed to be like a sort of old man Hollywood voice,
Yeah.
You
He's
know,
old man
come on,
Hollywood.
Luke, just be honest with
Yeah,
us.
I'm not shutting any door on anything like that. But I've got another 2 years after this at Huds, and I'd love to stay, and if as long as they'll keep me.
That's what you said at Salford, wasn't it, when you signed that new deal as well?
Hey.
The lawyers are still working out the
That's it.
small
He's going to stay
print.
at the Giants and hopefully become a Giant.
Yeah, that's the plan. But yeah, I'm not pigeonholed into anything. We'll cross them bridges as it comes. Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much for coming in. It's been really
Yeah,
good to
cheers,
get
guys.
to
Thanks
know
for
you.
having
Cheers
over
for
the last
staying in the coffee shop for 7 hours.
hour. So yeah, forced onto the podcast. But what a good guest, Mark.
Great
Well
guest.
done. It's
Thanks.
one of the best things you've done on the podcast. It's
Added
setting up
some
guests.
value for once.
We should just, if you are just wandering around Mark's coffee shop and you want to come on the podcast, just find him.
Find him.
Did you even get a discount on your lunch
No,
earlier
I'll get
on?
him a
2
coffee.
coffees and me avo on toast. How much?
I'd say it's about
million.
30 quid in here.
Probably the
Isn't
same transfer fee that Huddersfield paid for you. But yeah, I'll get you a coffee tomorrow. Don't worry.
Very
Great
nice.
great coffee down
it?
here.
Luke, top man, thanks so much, mate. And let's hope you go all the way in that Challenge Cup. You could be in a Challenge Cup final with fans. How nice would that be?
Oh, mate, I want that
As opposed
redemption.
to the dead ting, which you had to experience at Wembley last time. Luke, top man, thank you very much. And just a reminder to the sort of, if you are a robber or a thief, John Wilkins' property is empty.
Yeah, it's still on holiday.
You're not going to know when this is going
think
out,
he's-
but I can
he's
give you a
back on
date. We're recording this
yeah.
right now. It's the 11th of April at 7:08.
Yeah.
We're recording this, and John Wilkins' property will be vacant for I think another 6 or 7
And
days.
back
So
on Saturday.
if you
so
are a
do your
robber,
best.
keys under the flower pot, out the back, little sort of pink hipster flower pot out the back that John and Fran keep the keys under, and help yourself. And we'll see you next time on Out of Your
See you
League.
next
Give
time.
us a little follow, give us a review. Out of Your
5 stars.
RL on Twitter. Go on Spotify, go on Apple Podcasts actually, and write a comment. There's some interesting ones about John Wilkin on there, so keep those.
YouTube, as
flooding
they say in Yorkshire.
We're 4.8. We're 4.8 out of 5. It's not good enough. We should be 5. All the other podcasts are pathetic. We should be 5. And we didn't even win the award, by the way. We didn't even win the Sports Podcast Award. I don't know where we came, Mark. I don't know if we got on the podium, but we didn't get
bronze,
to
we got bronze.
put our dinner jackets on and celebrate that. So here's to next year. If you keep giving us nice reviews, we might win something. Thanks for listening. See you next time.